Hi, I'm Rena Greenberg. So often when we're going through a difficult time in our lives, it's so easy to want to give up hope. Sometimes we don't see any good in the situation at all, and it's difficult to be optimistic. In fact, we may feel the opposite. We may feel a sense of despair and feel like the dark cloud is never going to leave. But it's so important to remember that no matter what we go through in our lives, no matter how difficult, whether it's grief, whether it's loss, maybe loss of health or some kind of a loss of trust that happens to us, no matter what it is, we have to realize that there's always a gift waiting for us, even if it doesn't seem that way at the time. But if we're patient, we find that there is a gift. And for me in my own life, sometimes it might just be someone I get to meet, or someone I get to help, or a quality that develops in myself, maybe strength, compassion, or patience. And this is certainly true for me in many areas of my life, but especially regarding how I got into the field of hypnosis, how I got into the field of helping over 100,000 people to lose weight, to stop smoking, to achieve their goals, to build confidence in their lives. And it came about through my own life tragedy. And it started over 20 years ago. When I was when I was 17, I moved to New York City, and I led a very fast-paced lifestyle. I had a lot of energy, a lot of social contacts. In fact, I started to work for Club Med at the age of 25. I went to work at the villages of Guadeloupe and Martinique and Moorea and Tahiti. And when I got back to New York, I was very sick. I had lost all my energy. And I started searching for my health. I went from doctor to doctor looking for a cure, but there was no cure to be had. And finally, after a year of this, I just decided to give up on restoring my health. I realized that I was developing the identity of a sick person. That's how I was starting to see myself, and that's how other people were starting to see me. And I didn't want that at all. So I decided I'm just not going to be sick anymore. Well, 3 weeks later, I ended up in the emergency room of Brooklyn's Methodist Hospital. And I was whisked into the ER, and I thought for sure that they would just send me away and tell me there's nothing wrong with me, the way all the other doctors had. But instead, I remember this lovely Swedish doctor, he leaned right into me. He said, "Rena, we need to admit you." And I said, "Admit me? That's impossible. I have a test tomorrow. I'm going to be working the next day." And he said to me, "Your heart rate is in the 30s, 30 beats per minute." He said, "The only thing keeping you alive is your age." Well, that hit me, and I agreed. So they admitted me, and within a few days, the chief of cardiology did tests on my heart. And I remember I was surrounded by resident doctors, and at the end of the test, the chief of cardiology declared, he said, "Miss Prague," which was my maiden name, he said, "Miss Prague, you have the heart of an 80-year-old. I was 26 years old. I burst into tears. I didn't know what that meant. The heart of an 80-year-old? He, at that moment, installed a temporary pacemaker on my leg, and he gave the orders to keep that pacer off to see what my own heart would do. Well, a couple of days later, it was the weekend, and all of a sudden I started to get this chest pain. So I called the nurse, the resident doctor came in, they gave me some medication, but it didn't help. And the chest pain's getting stronger and stronger. And I called the nurse in, beautiful young Filipino woman, and I said to her, "Please turn the pacer on. The pain is getting worse. It's radiating down my left arm." And she said to me, "I can't turn it on. It's against doctor's orders." And she ran out of the room. Well, the pain keeps intensifying. Now I'm sitting up in bed. I'm clutching my chest, racked with pain. Tears are streaming down my face. And I realize I'm having a heart attack. I'm literally dying here. And in that moment, what came to my mind was the image of my mother. My mother is a German Jew. She's a Holocaust survivor. And she suffered so much loss in her life. And in that moment, as I was having this heart attack, I realized that if I were to die then, for her to lose her 26-year-old daughter would just crush her. And I prayed to God in that moment, and I did not pray for myself. I said to God, please, if my mother has any grace, and I knew she did because she's such a generous, charitable woman, very selfless. I said to God, if my mother has any grace, Please let me live for her. I said, if I do live, may I live a better life. May I be on this earth to help others. May I lead a new life. May I no longer lead the selfish kind of life that I've led in the past. And as I prayed for my mother, in that moment, that young little nurse came into the room. She was terrified. I could see the fear in her eyes because, again, she was going against doctor's orders. She flipped on the pacemaker and bolted out of the room. Chest pain subsided, and of course, thank God she did that because she saved my life. I was kept in the CCU, the cardiac care unit, for another week, and then I was released from Brooklyn Methodist Hospital after a 3-week stay. And I remember standing out on the sidewalk when I left the hospital, looking up at the sky and feeling so grateful that I was still alive. I had been given a second chance. And I made a decision that I was going to lead a better life. And shortly after, I re-enrolled in college, Brooklyn College, and I started studying health and psychology. I wanted to devour everything I could about that. I studied nutrition. But what fascinated me the most was the power of the mind, the power of our thoughts to change our life. Not just by changing our behavior, but also by changing the people who we're attracted to, the people who are attracted to us, the circumstances. When we change our thoughts, it seems that we're in the right place at the right time much more often. And I was so fascinated by this. I became certified as a biofeedback therapist, board certified as a hypnotherapist. And about that time, I had just met the man who was to be my husband. And together, after I got my degree in biopsychology from the City University of New York, we came down to Florida. And I've been so blessed. I was able to start a seminar business where I would go to hospitals. In fact, I've been in over 75 hospitals where I speak to large audiences using the power of hypnosis to help them to change their lives, particularly with weight control and smoking cessation and addiction. And since that time, I've had such a gift. I've worked with over 100,000 people. I never thought that my illness could help me to turn my life around, so much so that I could have such a wonderful experience where I could not only touch lives, but have my life touched by so many people. I ended up having 2 books published by major publishers. The Right Way was published by Hay House, and The Craving Cure published by McGraw-Hill. And I realized that this gift came to me all through my own tragedy. At the time, I felt so much despair. It was such a difficult time. But I want to let you know that if you're going through a difficult time right now, realize that there's a gift in store for you, whether it's someone you meet or a quality that you've developed within yourself. And for me, it was about constantly asking that I be used somehow, that something good come from this, and keep looking for where's the good here. And always wanting to serve. First serve myself, because first you have to heal yourself.